Falls on Point. Today we're going to be looking at Mother's Basement again. This is a relatively old video, a few years ago, and it's going to be about how based and red-pilled the the director of
And there goes Paul's on Point. The channel's just been destroyed. Good job.
Oh no!
Yeah,
no.
we're going to be looking at what I'm pretty sure is an average poll user, as it were.
And it's been an honor to serve a few this evening.
An average poll user, and I think he talks about the Rurouni Kenshin, so also a Chris Hansen enthusiast. So
yeah, it's gonna be a
I had a look
episode.
at his My Anime List page. He has a lot of followers of his based. He is the supreme based director, and his Twitter got banned. So I'm very disappointed. I wanted to follow this very based man, but
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what he was tweeting. Like, he used to always retweet, like, fucking crazy shit onto my feed. And I just, like, it's great.
Yeah, no, I like when people started, talking about, like, somebody actually confronted him, like, how could you do this? And he's like, I mean, if you want to know more, and then he links to a bunch of, like, conspiracy websites. I'm like, oh no, he's overdosed.
Oh, I like this guy already.
So yeah,
Dude,
we're gonna be seeing. So yeah, we're gonna be seeing what Mother's Basement thinks of the dude, and I guess the concept, the general idea of separating the art from the artist, and yeah,
it's an interesting topic.
I
have my own opinions on this. Probably
I think it's going to be a very interesting discussion. So this is primarily why I chose this video for today, because I think it's a very interesting topic. It's a very relevant topic because cancel culture being on the rise and people getting cancelled for their opinions and all this other bullshit. I think it's a very,
I know that there was a light novel author, and I might go into this when we get further. Actually, I'll bring it up when we get into the video. Actually,
probably a good idea. So yeah. Anyway, let's see what the opening is.
The director of Recovery of an MMO Junkie is... how should I put this delicately? He's a bit of a Nazi. Yeah, I know.
I don't know why it does this for you, but hang on, let me...
Should I rejoin?
No. Okay, hang on. So, let me play it for a test.
So, the director of Recovery of an MMO Junkie is...
Nope.
Okay, then rejoin. So, back out of it and come back in.
Yeah, I'll rejoin.
I don't know why it does that for you. It's weird.
Okay, it should be better.
Right,
yes, it's working now.
How should I put this delicately?
Okay,
he's a bit of a Nazi. Yeah, I know that word gets tossed around a lot in popular discourse these days in a slightly hyperbolic and sometimes not so hyperbolic fashion, but this is not one of those situations. Director Kazuyoshi Yaginuma's Twitter likes are a sea of Holocaust denial and neo-Nazi rhetoric, and he's also tweeted...
Oof.
The Japanese animation as a slave industry, the lowest tier of Jewish exploitation society? What?
Yeah. Man, this is just
I thought they feared the samurai.
This is just like a snippet, like a small slice of this dude.
I want to meet this man, the based man.
He seems very unhinged.
Just a little bit.
Maybe.
This is going to be the video that finally gets this channel deleted.
This is going to be the one. This is going to be the one. It's
disavowed.
It's over. Critical critique is over after this. We're
No,
done.
our many subscribers.
Oh no.
All 10 of them.
Hail
16.
Yeah,
All
we're
right.
up to 16, bitch.
Yeah,
it's almost
20. Double digits. All right, let's keep going.
Did many anti-Semitic sentiments himself in both English and Japanese.
Even in Japan, if you do bad things, the press will not report it. Money bend the law. The powerful person buys a lie with money. Same as the financial Jews.
Okay,
Japan is useless. Can you spread from overseas? Help the goddess of animation in Japanese animation.
So
the best part. No, I'm sorry, but the best part is the broken Google Translate.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. But okay,
Yeah,
so
I've actually been told by Japanese people that Google Translate is shit, so I tend to believe them.
yeah, so while he's not wrong that the press can be brought out with money, while he's not wrong that the press can be brought out with money, I don't think it has anything to do with Jewish people.
You know, I'm fucking amazed that Mother's Basement didn't censor. I'm amazed that he didn't like blue.
Well, no, because Mother's Basement is secretly all right. He's like, okay, I'm going to.
Are we bringing this? Are we bringing this?
Yes, we're bringing this back.
We're bringing this back, are we?
Because you see, because he didn't censor the hateful rhetoric, he's trying to, get people to look at it. He gave us a convenient screenshot of a now suspended Twitter account, so we now have useful information.
Oh my god.
Oh my
So now
God,
we
Mother's
know.
Basement's a secret Nazi.
It all
Yeah,
makes
no.
sense.
Yeah, no, he's the master.
comrade.
He's working with Pedantic to kill all the goblins. Quotations. Good. No, what is it? No, it's to kill all the bracket goblins. Bracket.
That's what would it
Hey,
be?
everyone knows that everyone knows that Jews are a bunch of thieving people that rape. This is
Okay,
clearly-
don't
Right,
say things that get the channel yeeted.
Easy bio. Easy.
Fucking
I've
get
been
the fuck
exposed by the baseness. It's corrupted me.
Okay, Lowell, you go.
But yeah, no, like, what was I gonna say now? That just, like, floored my ass. So, yeah, no, what was the guy in charge of propaganda in the Nazi war machine? Was it Goering or something?
Goebbels.
Goebbels?
Something like
Goebbels. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Mother's Basement is Goebbels. Whoever was in charge of the whole medical treatment was is Rika, because clearly he can justify the ethics of his experiments, and our feared Hortler, as it were, is pedantic.
Oh my god.
Hail pedantic. Our one and true Lord.
Oh, that's great. Okay, let's keep going.
Japanese.
It's just
These
a-
tweets date back at least as far as 2012, and the fact that he managed
Oh, look, it's fucking Kappa. Oh, that lovely fucking dude. Right.
I don't know who these people are.
I'm gonna try and read these, just for like video sake, because that way it, like, if people aren't like watching.
That
the
way
video-
YouTube's algorithms can pick our asses up and
Yeah, pretty
finally
much.
end this joke.
Finally end this joke. Okay, so Kappa says that people have said that he's trolling or just doesn't understand. These sort of tweets are going back 5 years. Turns out, in response to my own tweet, English-speaking neo-Nazis began speaking with him. And then he has a quote or screenshot of a tweet that says, "Although it was a country of freedom when America was founded, little by little it was eroded by Judea."
Oh my lord.
I think he didn't read the founding of America and how it's basically, you people aren't religious enough for me. You're too free of religion. We're going to found our own country where we can be more religious.
Mm.
Yeah.
Also tea prices were also way too high, so
There were a lot of
Eat
facets.
that,
lot
eat
of
that shit
facets.
into the harbor.
Yeah, there was a lot of facets.
yeah,
going
yeet that shit.
on. But yeah, I know.
Coffee
I
drinkers in the
vaguely, I'm like, shit's coming back to me from when this drama was going off, and I remember Kappa was a very prominent figure in the let's cancel this fucking Nazi movement. Not
Which they failed because he still has a job in the industry.
Yeah, they failed pretty bad. I mean, he's suspended now, but he wasn't suspended. I don't know when he got suspended, but it must have been recent because I remember seeing his tweets. At least
I
after.
know the people who were his employers was like, yeah, we'll tell him to stay off of Twitter.
Yeah. So I guess it just goes to show that the Western side of things has absolutely zero fucking sway over what. The chat
his
Welcome to Japan, the very, very based country.
Yeah, his homepage is also gone, so yeah, he was probably told by his bosses, just cut it out, what the fuck.
Yeah, which is fair enough, I guess. But,
Stop it,
but I
get
will-
some help.
The
But
good
I
old Japanese mentality of as long as the personal life doesn't affect the work life, it's fine.
Yeah.
And now it affected the work life, and now Japanese culture prevails, and his personal views
Yeah.
are gone.
Yeah. So yeah, personally
God
though,
bless Japan.
I'm not a particularly a big fan of Kappa. He's had some hot takes that I'm not particularly a fan of, and he's a bit of a contentious individual. When it comes to me, so I don't know. I'm remembering a lot of shit that he tried to pull during this whole fiasco. So because here's the thing, right? Even though this guy is pretty woke, right? He's pretty fucking woke on the Jewish question, alright? And all this shit. I don't think that he deserved to be cancelled, or at least have his life ruined in the way that a lot of these people wanted
Well,
it to
the
be
video
ruined.
is going to talk about it, so maybe we should play it until
that's
the
a good
part.
that's a good point. So let's see let's see how it progresses.
To secure a directing role after pushing such a vile ideology probably says a lot about Japanese culture and the country's inclination to sweep its own horrific war crimes under the rug. But that's a...
Ooh, Mother's Basement.
While that is definitely something...
triggered.
While that is definitely something that the government absolutely does, it's kind of weird this put government actions from one side of the fence on the entire society, because, I mean, a lot of people like to say that Barefoot Gen was too sympathetic towards itself, but part of the reason why it faced such an uphill struggle for being put in schools over there is because it does actually show accounts of what the Japanese did in Nanking, and,
Yeah,
so... to say that this is everybody, this is kind of what I kind of hate about these people. They don't think there's any individuality within societal systems, and it's really weird.
It's just the
monolith,
right?
Japanese people have historians, like they have people who keep records of these stuff and talk about it. It's like, yeah, we did war crimes.
I think there's,
we used Chinese soldiers as target practice for bayonets and shit.
And the thing is, right, is that the Japanese war crimes, it's not just the Japanese that don't really talk about the Japanese war crimes, because a lot of people don't really know or care about them, and I think a somewhat of a reason for that is, I mean, we did, the Allies, when I say we, right, we did kind of throw 2 nukes at them, so
not just that, I can actually go a bit into this, because okay, so one of the things that MacArthur did, and this goes back to GHQ's, their own propaganda campaign during the Allied occupation of Japan, one of the things the GHQ did, for one, they pardoned the people involved with, Unit 761? They pardoned them. They also pardoned the Japanese Emperor Hirohito at the time. There's an important political reason for that, but Hirohito did sign off, contrary to popular belief, while he was not in favor of attacking the US, he did sign off on a lot of this shady shit everybody else was doing. He put his signature to that. And part of the reason why he was pardoned, and this would be a similar reason if, it was the UK. Imagine trying to convict and trying to occupy the UK, and just you occupy the UK, yeah, the UK's done some bad shit, so, we occupy them, and we need to punish people, and we decide, oh, well, we're going to sit here, and we're going to try and, for life, imprison the royal family. How do you think the British people would respond?
Because that is particularly well.
That is a central aspect of their culture, and for the Japanese, the emperor's family is directly related to divinity. To them, that's part of the Shinto religion.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the Yamato bloodline has been the empress since 6th century BC or something. And apparently
so it's claimed. So it's claimed.
Yeah, so it's claimed. Yeah, but
they've been around for they've
quite
been,
a while.
They've been for a long time.
Yeah. And it's there's a lot of again, it's Mother's Basement being smooth-brained, right? It's a bit more complicated than just, oh, well, they ignore the war crimes, right? There's a little bit more going on with the
normally I wouldn't. Normally I would be fine with brushing over things that aren't related to the central point of the video, but this is very related to the central point of the video, because you're trying to make the claim of, oh, this guy was anti-Semitic because of their own callous nature towards their own war crimes, which isn't true at all. That's a very, very broad statement that I can't believe he just said right now.
Yeah, it's a very big generalization. Like,
well, there is. I will defend it slightly, but in the sense that the Japanese try to avoid or don't mention the war crimes.
a little bit.
There were, and we would look very strange at Germany if they didn't say, yeah, we killed a bunch of Jews. We would kind of say, Germany, you're trying just to whitewash your history. And the Japanese don't mention their internment camps in the Southeast Asia at all.
Yeah, but
and the horrible conditions.
You see, there's a couple of other things that happened during World War II. Like, do we want to bring up the camps that America had?
Dresden bombing.
We want to we could follow this thread line and we could just find bad shit.
Here's the thing, though.
Well, I mean,
this is why this is kind. Can I finish something?
All right.
Because this is related to this point. The difference is, and why that's a false equivalent, is that the U.S. has apologized for the Japanese, the Italian, and the German. Both of those. By the way, the German internment camps actually ran for a little bit longer than the Japanese internment camps. And a lot of people don't know that there were internment camps for all three ethnic groups that were involved with the Axis powers at the time, but it absolutely was.
Mm.
Yeah, there was a bit of a racial tinge to it as well.
Yeah, so
as well,
and that's not wrong. It is true that America has kind of forgiven and lived.
But what I'm trying to say is that it's very that'd be like saying, oh, everybody in the U.S. is completely okay with that, or everyone in the U.S. is okay with the atomic bombs. No, that wasn't the case at all. And it certainly isn't the case in Japan, because there are major political factions that have come out. There's a political history here. The LDP's domination of the entire political landscape for the past 50 years contributes to this. It's easy just to say, oh, well, their entire society just ignores this. It's harder to look at the actual situation, and this is why I really dislike Mudder's Basement. He's so he's so basic in his approach to things. He does such a very sloppy historical look at certain things that it actually kind of taints the arguments, because suddenly you're having to basically join the conversation with people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
I think what you just said, to round this off so we can continue the video, right? I think what you just said is pretty on point with the idea of what Mother's Basement just said would be like saying everyone in America was okay with the camps, or everyone in America was okay with the nukes, or everyone in America was okay with some of the other horrific shit that went down in World War II, because World War II is fucking messy on all sides, right? And that's not like me being a centrist, like the meme of, oh well, they're all bad. There's bad people on all sides or whatever. No, if you look into the history of World War II, it's objective fact that everyone was doing some kind of fucking to varying degrees, obviously, but everyone had done some shit that they shouldn't be particularly proud of, right?
Well, I mean,
also it's war, so
Yeah, but it's easier to justify it.
There's a reason we have rules of war now that we kind of adhere to, because World War II was that much of a desperate and dehumanizing struggle.
It's pretty horrific. So yeah, to cap it off,
but war crimes are a number game.
Yeah. But to cap it off, I think that's the problem with what Mother's Basement said, is that he's overgeneralizing a very broad. Because because we should move on, because we've been on this for quite a while. I knew this would be a good video. So yeah, let's
the last video we ever do.
Yeah, so let's continue.
topic for another video. Recovery of an MMO Junkie is one of my favorite shows from last year. I think it's very well written and cute, and I've even explicitly praised the direction of the show for being creative and efficient. I would definitely unequivocally say that Yaginuma is a good director, but with the same assuredness, I'd also definitely say that he's a bad person. This kind of dissonance when it comes to art...
He has a YouTube channel. And one of the liked videos is Adolf Hitler, the man who fought the bank truth.
Oh my lord. How deep does this go?
I wonder if this YouTube still exists. I wonder if he still has this YouTube. That's amazing.
You want me to look it up?
Nah.
Apparently the video is... the footnote of the video is a Jewish flag, the Israeli flag, but instead of blue, it's red. And I believe in the video itself, it's the assassination of the John F. Kennedy.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, clearly the Jewish bankers are communists. I mean, communists are great at banking.
Oh, and the video is basically implying that John F. Kennedy
I think I found it, but I think he changed his name.
Oh god, okay.
I think I found his YouTube channel.
Okay, let Elliot.
Apparently, the video is saying that John F. Kennedy fought the bankers and he was shot.
No,
for it.
no, it says Adolf Hitler, not JFK.
Yeah, but the video is JFK in the subtitles.
Okay,
in the video
maybe.
is those who fought against this power.
JFK
died.
was actually Hitler. That's the actual big brain galactic tank. He was cloned Hitler. That's why he was assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald. He was actually
Jewish banker.
Who's the left wing anime YouTuber? ER. He was assassinated by ER. He went back in time.
Okay, let's continue.
Is sadly not uncommon.
Also, look at the subscriptions. You've got a guy there that is the fourth right 2009.
Oh yeah, sorry. The image is
it's kind of cut off, but like there's a YouTube channel in the subscription section.
Well, common indie Walt. Also Kojo Tano and Anime Fancy One.
Yeah.
No. Literally, I don't see the video, the channel anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, but let's continue.
Tend to put artists, especially celebrities, up on pedestals, conflating the quality of their art with the quality of their character.
I just want to point out, he purchased something on YouTube, bro. Okay, keep going.
Alright, let's keep going.
And turning them into role models when maybe they shouldn't be. And as the recent string of #MeToo scandals in Hollywood has demonstrated, being a great actor or director doesn't preclude someone from being a shitty person. And this creates an unfortunate conundrum for those of us who study and critique, well, any kind of art really, but especially narrative-focused artwork like
That would also apply to you, Mother's Basement, and also the amount of I don't even think you've done even basic research. So,
right. So something that I'm gonna kind of enforce here is, because I want to get through this video in a decent amount of time, is we're gonna try and like let him say his points and then try and pause, kind of.
All right. Well, that's what I wanted to say. Like, it seems like it's like. All that shit that he just said could just be applied on him.
Yeah, and that's...
I don't think we can go through this video without Longman batting it like really hard.
It's gonna be a slog, but at the same time, I feel like it's a lot to get through, and I think if we just spent like fucking half an hour talking about Japanese war crimes, like we have to kind of like
I know
get through it.
Let me just,
but I don't disagree with you there, Bio, in the fact that you're like. Mother's Basement's point just now was the idea that, yeah, just because, like, you're good at something doesn't mean that you can't be a shit person. Like, that's a pretty general, like, easy to agree with point. Like, clearly there are, like, a funny example of this is my mum really hates Tom Cruise. Like, she fucking...
Mine too.
She fucking hates Tom Cruise with a passion, and I always, like, I've had multiple chats with her about, not like I'm a fan of him or anything, but just because I'm interested in, like, the mentality, and one of the main reasons is the Scientology stuff, and the fact that she just has this really gut feeling of him being a creeper. Like, she thinks he's just really fucking creepy.
Woman's intuition.
Yeah, she's got this, like, so... even though that's not like definitive proof that he is a creeper, but the Scientology thing is definitely something you could probably, think is kind of shitty.
Well, that's definitely suspect.
Yeah. So,
well, it's kind of interesting you say that, because my mom basically says the same thing, but she didn't get the same feeling from Kevin Spacey, and what he did is objectively worse than anything Tom Cruise has done, which Tom Cruise is just, at his worst, is just kind of crazy.
He's just a bit of a nutter, yeah. He's not like...
He's not an exploitative pedophile like Kevin Spacey was.
So the point that Mother's Basement made generally is not incorrect.
Yeah, I know, but you also, a lot of these people who are like pedophiles or secretly, like, they're very predatory. Like, how do you get close to your prey? Oh, you blend into your environment or make yourself look less threatening.
Yeah.
It's just simple logic.
Clearly. So, but anyway.
Like a lion doesn't walk up to an antelope. A lion gets in close.
All right.
And gets ready to pounce.
I mean, like, none of you know that I've been planning to rape Ellie for, like, the past 6 months. What?
Fuck, this video is gonna get us fucked so bad.
I have a feeling.
God damn.
Demonetized?
No, not even demonetized, just yeeted. Yeeted for hates. Yeeted. Yeah. We've already had fucking war crime talk, and now we're talking about raping each other. Like, what the fuck? Damn it. Alright.
Lolly, the safety word is rabbit.
Let's let Mother's Basement go on for a little bit, and then we'll discuss what he has to say.
Books and movies. How are we supposed to take great art, talk about it, and engage with it when it comes from not so great people? I mean, it's not like we can just divorce the opinions of creators from their artwork, especially not in the case of narrative-focused works with a singular creator. When someone is creating a story, of course the way that they view the world is going to inform how characters act or how society functions in that story. It's inevitable.
Okay. So that's somewhat interesting, the view that that the creator's views will inherently transfer into the work. I think that's kind of interesting. I feel like
I actually agree with that.
I do too. I'm just trying to like think about how I want to formulate the point.
Well, let's take Gate.
Yeah.
Gate is written by a military guy who thinks Japan is great. So, and military is great. So, you got
Japanese
in the show
nationalism,
in the second season. Anyway, late. I didn't finish the first season. Late in the anime, you got a moment where you got the evil journalists. And the evil journalist is defeated by facts and logic. And then...
Ben Shapiro wrote this?
Oh, God.
And then...
Maybe.
And then the character, a military character, basically stands up, looks at you, at the camera, and says, the Japanese army is great.
Okay, so hang on, because that's a really, like, obvious example, like, clear-cut case of that. But what I think Mother's Basement is talking about more than that is the idea of unconscious bias seeping in. Right?
Yeah, but
because that's not fucking unconscious bias. That's just straight up bias. Like that's not.
Well, yeah,
but
that's not
bias. Is just
because Mother's Basement is talking more about the idea of your worldviews and your like stuff like seeping into the work when you don't particularly mean them to, rather than like doing that deliberately, because clearly that's deliberate.
Well, but
than like him just like it's not like he's writing.
But that's with like all art and shit. Like, you know, that's like all art and shit. Like people do it and like when people draw dojins and shit like that, they're doing it as well. Like they draw what they like.
But my point is that if you got very obvious, and maybe it wasn't done deliberately even, but my point is, if you do it obviously, people can pick it up on. If you do it subtly, it's either people don't pick it up on and don't recognize it and don't act on it, or people do recognize it and think it's stupid and move on, or people agree with it and it's the minority. So either way, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I have two things to say about this. First of all, it's kind of weird that I know he chose Netsusume because it was topical at the time, but the thing is that the guy in charge of everything was in a director's role, he wasn't in the writer's role. And while the director definitely had a bias on it, it can be argued that unless it was shared by the entire staff, that isn't going to be something that is directly transferred per se. Like, he didn't, as far as I know, he didn't alter the alter the source material in any significant fashion.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, like an anime director's job is. Oh, never mind.
And two, I think a better example rather than Gate would be if you've ever watched Jinro, which is part of the Kerberos saga, which was written by Mamoru.
Oh, I've seen Jinro.
Yeah, which was written by Mamoru Oshii. Something that's not stated, but something that is definitely pronounced in a lot of his works is one. There's usually very visceral protest scenes, which is related to his experiences in the student protest back in the 60s, I believe, and he does have a more anti-American stint on things, which again is related to the same thing, because the U.S., look it up because it is some shady shit, the U.S. did fund the LDP, and is more or less the reason they are culturally dominant. So, yeah.
I will somewhat go in for Mo's Basement and clarify that he did mention that he somewhat, I believe, said that he's talking more about like single, like if one person did the whole thing, right? Which is interesting because again, that's not like as you mentioned, the MMO Junkie was the director, so it's a bit different. But yeah, I feel like if you're writing a story or you're creating like a piece of artwork or something in the terms of like that kind of thing, a bit of your own personal stuff is going to seep in. I do agree with that. However, it's okay. Let me finish, Byron, and then I'll let you go. Right. It's a matter of like how much seeps, if you're conscious of it or not, if you recognize it, and a number of other factors that go into that kind of thing. It's an interesting kind of thing to talk about, and I don't necessarily think that he's wrong on that point. I just find it to be very interesting.
Well, it may not be malicious. Like, some people just have a personality that they step into their work. Like, there's several mangas I've read, where after reading some of the other works, I can kind of get the personality of the author, or at least get a basic idea.
It's kind of like a writing style almost, right? Like they have a particular way that they do,
or an artist style. Like you can kind of tell. You don't know. It's difficult to describe, but you can kind of say like, I can, judging from this writing style and the way this person does things, I can sort of picture this type of person. And another thing I want to bring up is that like a director, their main job is to make it flow into like an anime format, like whether it be a manga or a light novel or a webcomic or whatever the fuck. Like they don't really have much of an impact on story. They've got more of an impact of setting the scene. I want this soundtrack playing here, or the camera angle here. They're trying to make it look good. Like they don't really. The only time they'd ever have impact on story is if they want to do like a filler episode, or they come to friends and like, hey, we need to flesh out this concept, but I'm finished.
Yeah. So the director role doesn't really do creative things, but I'll say my last thing. I think the point of influence seeping in is kind of a media influences territory, where you say if you play games, you'll become a murderer, etc. If you read books, so I have some resistance against that point.
I think definitely, because here's the thing, right? The idea of your personal beliefs and feelings on things seeping into your work is one thing, but that is an interesting idea because and how it ties into that concept of normalization and all that other kind of bullshit.
Here's the thing. People aren't completely passive when they consume anything. A lot of people like to say, oh, turn your brain off, whatever. Nobody ever really turns their brain off completely. And there's always a period where, by the way, off topic, but the more I look at these two kissing, the more it kind of looks less human. But I see the shapes, not the people.
Yeah, we're gonna get
But anyways, but
it's also kind of hot, so
amorphous blobs are hot. Anyways, No, it's people when they walk away for something, like there is a period where you're completely forgiving of the film right after, you're basking in the afterglow, as it were, and then you sit down and then you think about it later on, and this is why in a serious film people don't just immediately talk about it the moment they get out of the theater. They sit on it a little bit. And it's the same thing with the whole, does media influence this? Like, most studies I've seen that have had any credibility behind it will talk about it can influence your emotions in the moment, but when you take away something like that, its ability to affect you fades substantially.
It's the difference between short term and long term.
Yes, and while I definitely think a person's opinions and worldview absolutely have an effect on the work they touch, that's why we express ourselves through artistic mediums, to portray how we view the world in some way. At the same time, people aren't going to immediately accept that worldview. They're going to be critical of it. That's why people are critical of media in general.
All right, let's keep going.
Oh, sorry, 1 sec. If you can pause real quick.
You just... Oh. I think we might have lost Ellie. Oh no.
Ah, rip. Well, we're gonna have to cut this part out of the video.
We'll just...
Also, I know where he's gonna go with Orson Scott's card, and honestly, fuck the people that give him so much shit. Like, his worst thing is, I don't like gay people, which is a boomer as fuck thing, and I'm willing to just be like, yeah, whatever, man, and get over it.
I mean, considering how much, like, homosexuality and bisexuality and all that fucking sexuality shit has spread over the last, like, decade or two.
I mean, it's also something that is an Ender's Game. Like, I'm not sure if you ever read it. Ender's Game's a great book, by the way.
I have not read it.
Ellie, have
read
you...
it.
Fine, I'll add it to the fucking list.
Ellie?
Not yet.
Yeah, guessing Ellie might be having some technical difficulties. I guess while we're paused, I reckon, it's. I'm just thinking about about the general idea that because
he's probably gonna bring up Lovecraft
possibly,
at some point,
yeah.
And I'm going to kind of... There's another person who went over our Lovecraft's work. It was Overly Sarcastic Productions. They did a good video on it. And one of the things she stated, because she was absolutely not putting up with some of Lovecraft's bullshit in her video, she was being very critical, but one of the things she stated is probably very poignant for me, in that it is exactly his biases that make the work what it is, and it's what makes it kind of interesting. It's a snapshot of a person, and it's a snapshot of an era. And I think just because somebody is necessarily a bad person, you shouldn't completely discount it, because you can learn quite a bit from a bad person on how to live your life.
Alright, Ellie, do you...
Yeah, like how not to live your life.
Sci-fi.
Ellie just rejoined. Right, so Ellie, is it working?
Yep.
Alright.
Yeah, I'm back.
Alright, we'll just keep going, and we'll just let mothers.
Well, could you rewind just 5 seconds,
if
2
I
seconds
can,
or something?
because you know how this fucking likes to... Oh shit, okay.
That's fine,
no,
that's fine.
Too far, okay. Oh, there we go, because he
just...
was on Ender's Game, and we're on. So everyone can see Ender's Game right now?
Yeah.
Alright,
Yeah, I can see
we're
Ender's
gonna go
Game.
from there.
Yeah, I'm good.
One of the greatest sci-fi novels ever written. Its author, Orson Scott Card, is vocally opposed to same-sex marriage, and his negative views on homosexuality have largely eclipsed the actual merits of his books in popular discourse. They were definitely the driving points in the conversation surrounding the film adaptation of Ender's Game, and it was even boycotted by LGBT groups. You'd expect then that the film or the book itself would be pieces of anti-gay propaganda, but if you've seen or read Ender's Game, then you know that's really not the case. Parts of it can be interpreted that way, but by the same token, there are many who find the story to be empowering. Ender's Game is a story about a young man who is bullied for how he was born, whose existence causes problems for his religious parents, yet he forges his own identity, rises up through his own willpower, and eventually learns to love, understand, and accept beings who at one point seemed alien and hostile to him. It's easy to see how those themes could resonate with, say, a gay youth in a religious household.
Okay.
Judging by...
I never watched a movie of
I
that.
don't either.
I didn't know Harrison Ford. How was it? Because I liked the book.
Watched it. It's probably.
I heard that the movie is significantly different from the book, but I thought the movie was good. I liked it.
I would suggest reading the book because it is one of those classics, and it was something that was popular in Japan. So if you want to know anything about, what influenced Japanese science fiction, Ender's Game and Starship Troopers are the two big ones. So a lot of people...
on Mother's Basement's kind of example, so he's using this as an example of... Right, so the author has anti-gay views, or as opposed to same-sex marriage. I guess... you'd consider that an anti-gay view. Yet the work doesn't necessarily have that bias within it.
Yeah, this is going to be somewhat controversial, and I am in no way anti-LGBT. I do not give a fuck what somebody does in their own spare time and what two consenting adults do within their own household. It is entirely their thing, so as long as they're not, physically killing each other, whatever, safety word and all that. But I can't really say that necessarily having an anti-gay viewpoint is necessary, especially with older people, necessarily makes them a bad person. It's something that's negative within the framework of today, and it's something I definitely view as negative, but Orson Scott Card also grew up during a time period where that was actually criminalized, that influenced him.
In terms of me, I'm more a proponent of the idea that the church should be separate from the state. So I feel like if a church doesn't want to perform a same-sex marriage, I feel like they should be able to not perform that. At the same time, I do think that if gay people want to get married, then why not? Even though I don't know why the fuck you'd want to get married in the first place.
At the same time, if somebody opens a gay chapel down the street, they're going to be.
That's what I mean, right? It's kind of like I hate to use the market will fucking solve the problem, but it's kind of.
And not even just the market that'll solve the problem. In the free society, people will solve the problem in general if you present it.
So I feel like, gay marriage should be legal, right? Like, I don't see why it wouldn't be legal, but I do think that there should be the ability for churches to be able to decide for themselves, each orthodoxy or whatever, because it's weird, because you have kind of like these two conflicting like theories of like freedom of religion, like you have freedom of religion on one hand, and then you have like the freedom of gay people and like the freedom of people on the other, and you have to kind of juggle the two a little bit on that topic.
Yeah, it's
well,
like
why have a
about
church to begin with? Why bother with the church to begin with? Just go to the county office and say we're married.
Because people are kind of stupid. That's why. Because
chapels.
It's similar to that debate they had like a few years back about like the baker who basically refused a gay couple. And people were saying like does he have the right to?
It was just an
example.
It was just a comment on different cultures where America has churches and stuff, and here churches are not a big deal. So you just go to the office and
just have a ceremony in an event center or some bullshit.
To be fair, for the longest time, and there are definitely people who do want to bring back this type of system, for a good deal of time, gay marriage wasn't recognized by the state. And while that may just seem like a label on the surface, the fact of the matter is that there are legal and there are financial benefits to getting married. For example, for the longest time, you couldn't go back, like if you're if somebody was, if a loved one had died or whatever, it's always the next of kin, which means that the person who would normally be next to the kin, the significant other, wouldn't be able to go back and see the body if the family didn't.
So that ties into what I was saying, that it should be legal, but I don't see why it should. But because again, I'm looking at the clock, and because I've got to be out by like fucking, I want to kind of get on with it a little bit. So
this might actually
if we don't end by fucking like 12:30, then it's definitely going to have to be a multi-parter. So we've only got like an hour and a half left. So let's get on with it.
What they said at one of the film's promotional events, that's the message that both director Gavin Hood and Harrison Ford, who plays Colonel Graff in the film, took away from the book and tried to draw out in the movie adaptation, which further complicates matters. Ender's Game is already a book from an anti-gay author that can be read to have a message of tolerance, acceptance, and understanding. The film, meanwhile, has dozens of authors: the director, the producers, the composer, the actors who bring each character.
I don't know if I would say that everyone that worked on it would be a author, quotation marks. I think that's a bit interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about that wordplay there. What do you guys think about that? Just as a quick point.
That's a bit of a stretch, yeah.
Yeah, it's a stretch, but there is, of course, a point in that the author of a movie is not alone.
Because I get what he's trying to say. I just don't like the word usage of like conflating author with every. Like, are we gonna say that the lighting, the guy that mops up is an author because he's in the credits? That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at, right? Like when we're talking about a movie, we're talking about like. I mean, you've seen the credits to movies. It's a shitload of people.
Well, you say, what you see in the red scene, what you're forgetting is that because the guy who mopped up the stage did such a good job, there wasn't a stain in a particular scene. So clearly, he has some sort of authorial, this labor is part of his own labor, and labor belongs to the workers.
All right.
So what I'm saying is I'm the communist Counter-Strike against the fucking fascist that is mother's basement.
All right, let's get. Let's continue.
Traitor.
Character to life, the production designers, the editors and effects artists, and the cinematographer, all of those people, in using their talents to bring the story to life, had a hand in deciding how it was told and ultimately what it was about. Can you really even say that it's Orson Scott Card's movie after all of that? Even if the text isn't homophobic, are the book and the movie inherently bad because their original creator had those views? And is it worth punishing all of the other people who worked on the film for the views of just one of them? MMO Junkie was...
Stop for a second. Well, how does he not know that some of those people also share the same views?
Well,
they don't. That's a stupid point.
He doesn't know.
The issue. Well, no, but the issue. No, but the issue with Mother's Basement here. Okay, well, I'm trying to think of how.
This came up recently in something that happened in the gaming sphere with Ion Fury, and just before anyone interrupts me, I don't care what anybody's actual opinions on the game are. The fact of the matter is that because of how people portrayed or viewed the politics of one public-facing Twitter account, very likely ran by one person who was in charge of social media presence, and one or two things on the Discord, suddenly this game that was in production for like 2 years and has had like hundreds of people working on it, hundreds of people whose lives ride on this selling, is suddenly in jeopardy. So I do think this is kind of why I hate the whole cancel culture and why I think it's more damaging to social causes than helpful, because think about the workers and the people that are involved with a major work. If a major work is boycotted and sidelined because of one person on the team, That causes even one or two people in the production staff to lose their job, potentially lose their home, and up in their lives. That's going to spread resentment towards these groups rather than acceptance.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's quite true. But yeah, right. Yeah, let's keep going. Oh, I know.
Like
I'll let you.
I was going to say. I was going to say whether or not anybody watching this thinks that the person who said some of those things over on Ion Fury staff is ignorant or not, or whether or not you find the use or the jokes towards homosexuals and some of the games, little prods, to be inappropriate or not, it doesn't help to boycott the game and then say, well, I'm just not going to buy it because they haven't fired certain people on staff. The entire staff now is now going to have a more negative perception and a fear-based perception of of a certain community you're trying to represent. I won't even say it's the gay community, just a community that the people defending them or the people attacking them is trying to stand for. It's gonna leave a bad taste in their mouth, and they're not gonna want to approach those people in the future. It kind of further divides
the Ion Fury
things.
thing is its own topic for another day, I think. But let's
buy the game. By the way, it's great.
One guy either. Yagi Numa had a whole animation staff working under him, and the show was adapted from a web manga written by someone who's never expressed anti-Semitic views. As director, Yagi Numa certainly had a hand in shaping the tone and message of the series, but he didn't put anything racist in the show itself, and it would be a real stretch to say that it's just his show. So, watching and paying for MMO Junkie or Ender's Game doesn't directly endorse or spread hateful messages, but...
Real quick. He's watching this on Crunchyroll.
Of course.
Watch this, a show on Crunchyroll.
Of course he is.
God, that
suspect.
You see, here's the thing, right?
Trash.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Mother's Basement has to juggle the idea of you shouldn't support the Nazis with the idea of please watch anime on Crunchyroll, right? She's trying to juggle these two things in his hands. It's kind of it's funny to watch him kind of try and like navigate this conundrum.
I would.
Yeah, there's also a thing I want to bring up as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can have like ideals or opinions outside your job. Like, this dude, he may be, maybe a bit based and red-pilled, but, he also has a job as an anime director. Like, his job comes first because he needs to put food on the table.
That's the whole point of the video, what we're discussing right now.
Okay.
Oh, well, I guess end the video then.
So, to get back on track, right, something I will say is, fuck, Crunchyroll looks old as shit. Like, Christ, like, look at that player. I almost want to do look at that dude. Oh, wait till you see on Crunchyroll's website, because fucking Christ, it's so bad. But so it's interesting how right now he's kind of trying to navigate around this. Don't support Nazis, but at the same time support the thing that gives me money. So let's keep going.
Then that's only part of the equation. Because while these products may not be hateful themselves, supporting them puts money in the pockets of people we know to be hateful, and by increasing their clout as creators, gives them a bigger platform for spouting their ideals, which is troubling to say the least. Nobuhiro Watsuki, the writer of Rurouni Kenshin, is a pedophile. That doesn't bleed.
Yeah, that's a... See, this is an interesting case, actually, and I'm actually glad that Mother's Basement just flat out fucking said it, because a lot of people do kind of like to tiptoe around it and kind of be a bit like, oh, well, yeah.
I mean, I've watched, like, Rurouni Kenshin and read some of the manga. Like, it's a very well done series. And I tend to ignore the fact that the creator is a pedophile. Because even though I dislike pedophiles, doesn't mean I dislike Rurouni Kenshin, because it's actually well made.
It's interesting for me to look at it, because there was nothing... Like, when I heard that news, he was the last person I would have thought. Like, when you think about it.
Yeah, same here.
Because, like, everything within the work, nothing indicated that. Like, there was there wasn't fan service of characters that, many people would see as being underage or something. There wasn't... Yeah, and then suddenly, you know, this comes out, and I remember kind of laughing, like, of course it would be this, and not, you know, the Made in Abyss
Yeah.
director who... Okay, well, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't trust the Made in Abyss, I said director, I meant author. The Made in Abyss author, I wouldn't trust him around a rabbit hutch. I see how he draws Nanachi. But, at the same time, yeah, no, it was the last thing I expected, like, you know.
Of course, we should make the distinction.
It's weird.
The Rurouni Kenshin author was not done for, like, lolly. He was done for, like, terabytes. Not just like,
yeah.
Oh, he had like a couple of naked pictures of kids on his phone. No, he had like fucking servers of this shit. Like,
yeah, no, he had
not
he had
even
literal
the-
terabytes, my dudes.
Not even the pre-pedophile, pre-child pornography ban. Some artists had some reference material of a naked boy or naked girl.
yeah, not even that. Like,
even
just
that.
straight up,
no.
like hardcore shit. So, it's
Yeah,
There's
no,
there's no like tiptoeing around it.
Yeah, what's particularly interesting too is that despite having all of that, he still sought out to buy more. Despite having actual terabytes. Look, man, like, when Sad Panda went down, I torrented like a 90 gigabyte thing of like lolly releases from 2018. I could never go through all of that shit.
So,
No, Lolly, I think it's Lolly. It's the fact that you need more.
Is his dick hanging on by like a little two tendon,
Fuck.
like tendrils? Like how often can you do that? Like how do you have that
anyway,
energy, man?
Yeah, so just
Well,
because
if we-
I'll
yeah, well,
let hang on.
I mean, how long has he actually been a pet?
Move on.
Yeah, I actually have a question.
Well,
how long has he actually been doing
well,
that
I mean,
for?
if he's
Like, is it a
collected
recent
like
thing, or-
terabytes of data, he's probably done it over the course of like quite a while, like because it was described to me in an article I read as he had like terabyte drives filled with it. So for him to have terabytes of data, he would have had to have been downloading a shitload of images because images are like if it's videos, that's a different story because videos are obviously like more data. But if it's mainly pictures and it's terabytes of data, that's a lot.
Yeah. Also, I do want to clarify something because a lot of people seem to misunderstand child pornography law in Japan as being something that only was illegal in 2014. No, it was possession of it was illegal, or not possession. Only possession has recently became illegal in 2014. In 1998, it was illegal for distribution and production of it. What the current law did was formally legalize actual possession of it. And a lot of people seem to be kind of weirded out by the fact that it was something that was capable of being produced until 1998, but that's not terribly unusual. For what I recall, Norway also roughly only around that time legalized it, and it was after very lengthy debate of stuff. It's kind of interesting, but that's a very young crime. Like, I mean, in the US, it was only formally legalized in like 19...
over into the text of Kenshin at all, and Kenshin is arguably one of the greatest shonen anime ever made. However, every time someone buys a Kenshin manga or watches the anime, he earns royalties, or at the very least, people who paid him for the license to that content do. So, why is that a problem? Because Watsuki was recently charged for possession of child pornography, which he would have had to buy on the black market from the people who made it, and he paid them with money he earned from his manga, which he got from his audience. So, in a very real sense, every Kenshin fan has ended up against their will financially supporting the abuse and exploitation of children. Maybe with...
That is a very you're guilty by association argument, and I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, how you're supposed to know for one, and beyond that point, this is no different than what he's using to justify still watching so-and-so on Crunchyroll. Out of curiosity, is Rurouni Kenshin available on Crunchyroll?
I don't know.
At the time of this video, because I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure one, that plays into it, and two, because I know Rurouni Kenshin's available on Hulu over there. Two, if that does bother you, piracy always exists. Disavow. Three, this is the same argument he's making for the Netju Susume, because there are more people involved in the publication, publishing, editing, and anything of Rurouni Kenshin. And they're not at fault for it.
How are you supposed to know where he does that money? He's just given money.
Because once the money passes hands, right? I don't you paid for the product.
Yeah.
Right?
This isn't like fencing. This isn't like fencing goods or
I brought
anything.
A lawnmower from someone, right? Let's say I'm on Trade Me and I brought a lawnmower from someone, and then it turns out that a couple of days later that dude used that money to buy a knife to kill his wife, right? Am I responsible because I gave him the money to be able to buy a knife to be able to kill his wife?
Yeah.
No, because someone else would have bought the lawnmower anyway.
The degrees of separation going on, right? I don't like this idea. I feel like there's a bit of a difference between because
he's going off of a moral and feelings-based judgment, and that's what's separating this. Because in theory, there is no difference between this and providing a platform for, in his own words, than providing a platform for the Netju Susume. But in both cases, there are a lot of people involved with both whose lives do actually depend on this, and this would be like saying, oh, you know that somebody at the Walmart, you're shopping at might be a convicted sex offender, or might own or might have a violent history, ergo you shouldn't shop at that Walmart. That's very nebulous for me. And the thing is that because of how these things work, you're always going to end up funding some illicit shit. You cannot live today without in some part funding the exploitation of people, including children in foreign countries, because of how production works.
Yeah, and also how money goes around. Money goes around also as well.
It's a systemic problem, and it's not something that you can really fight by targeting a very specific thing. This requires a top-down restructuring of things. So, he's encouraging slacktivism. Slacktivism.
If you've ever brought an iPhone, or if you've ever brought a piece of technology that's made in China, or anything like that, you're basically buying shit that's there's a lot of shit to talk about there, but I generally agree that you shouldn't be giving people guilt for association and saying, oh well, you brought this thing from someone that you not only didn't know was bad, but also at the same time the degree of separation between the exchange of money and because one
I want to, an example of, China and stuff. My grandfather went to China to do business deals with, Chinese, fridge manufacturing and stuff. My grandfather could have possibly been involved in Chinese sweatshops or industries. Huh?
You never know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course, he didn't mention that, but, he was involved with rich Chinese businessmen, because that was what he was sent over in China for, because he's an engineer and stuff, and he was doing business deals. My grandfather could have been involved in those Chinese sweatshops, and this was during the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, so, bring up that interesting fact, but that's all.
It's guilt by association, and I'm not a fan, so let's continue.
Just a fraction of a cent, but even that is far too much. So that's just one way that supporting even totally unrelated content created by bad people can support their evil practices. In fact, anyone who buys Kenshin right now is probably directly paying for Watsuki's legal defense. Not that it will do him any good, since Japan has a 99% conviction rate, but that's, again, a topic for another video. But what about how content can win its creators
Also, he was
influence?
found
For an
buying
example of that,
porn. Of course, he's guilty.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's still alleged as long
Yeah,
as not
guilty till
convicted,
proven.
etc.
Yeah.
Well, not well.
If you're buying, if
Okay,
a cop catches you
no,
buying
no,
drugs,
Yeah.
look,
Well,
Still
no.
alleged, still
we have to
alleged. We
remember
got a
that,
legal
you know,
system.
Guilty, innocent till proven guilty. He has to go to trial. Well,
Well,
yeah,
that's in
in
the
the
US.
US.
That.
Yeah,
That's
but
in the
that's
US,
the
that's
spirit
not
of
in
that
Japan.
philosophy is what I'm talking about, right? Like, yeah, he was.
yeah,
found,
I know,
like,
but you know, it's like
yeah, and I'm not
the
saying
evidence
that
is
you're
pretty
not
damning.
wrong, right? But I'm just, I kind of agree with Ali there that, you know, it's it's.
Use their correct terminology. We're not here to make
Yeah.
more wrong videos,
Yeah, no,
even
no.
if we are.
Yeah, that's also kind of the thing though. Like, their legal system is very much you're guilty until proven innocent, which leads into their conviction rate. And it's funny how, you know, he brings that up like almost like it's a good thing. No, there's bad things with the 99% conviction rate, and people have been falsely convicted off of that all the damn time.
Yeah, and if you're a defense attorney in Japan, you're like a specialist.
All right.
Because, I mean, if you win that 1% fucking defense case, you're a fucking
yeah, I was gonna
god.
say.
Have you played?
Yeah, I was
have
gonna
you played
say, play
Judgment by any chance?
But let's continue.
we need look no further than YouTube.
Oh, yeah,
more
here we
specifically
go.
At JonTron.
Yeah.
Here we
Here
go.
we go.
He already he explained him. He kind of made this point mute in the comments.
Here we go.
So
Can you bring up the comments or at least explain it to me?
basically, he Jeff was notified by the apology of JonTron and said, "All right."
And said, "All right, okay." So,
Yeah.
all right. Let's let. Okay, what we're gonna do is let's let Mother's Basement say what he has to say, and then we will counter what he like. We'll do the whole section, and we'll see what he has to say.
It was
Probably
just a
is, but let's
repeat of
just see
Guilt by
what he has to say.
association.
A polarizing figure, to say the least. While he's said some pretty awful shit, there's almost nothing political about John's videos in themselves. They're mostly just absurd comedic takes on video games and movies that are harmless and pretty funny in their own right. But because of the fame that these videos have won him, John's voice is greatly amplified when he makes hateful, racist, and factually incorrect statements. When he said that wealthy blacks commit more crime than poor whites on a live stream, thousands of people heard him. Even worse, at least some of his fans listened. The archive debate has almost 1 million views on YouTube. Statistically, at least some of those people have to be dumb enough to take what John said as fact.
No. I know he's not done
yet.
yet, but I think we can kind of get what he's getting at. He's talking not necessarily about guilt by association, but this idea of responsibility for the audience. Not even that. It's
Media
responsibility
influence.
for the audience, right? People. He's saying that because JonTron is such a large figure who has such a large following, he has more responsibility to make sure that he is not, as you mentioned, influencing people in particular ways. Now, I personally fall into the philosophy of that you're not responsible for the actions of the audience, right? Like, if people went out and did stuff based on what JonTron said or believed what JonTron said and were inaccurate or whatever, then it's not necessarily his fault in terms of actions. I do agree on the idea that because he has a large audience, he has a responsibility to be more factually correct. I think that's true, and I think that him going off those statistics and not being going off false statistics and being
Maybe
being
cite his sources
wrong in that regard.
There wasn't room for that.
I
I'm not sure if you ever watched the Destiny
yeah.
stream, but Destiny does this shit all the time, where he purposely tries to ask loaded questions to bait people into gotcha moments. That's how he does it. It's the lowest
Isn't
form
Destiny
of
a guy who was like advocating for child porn at one point?
I really,
we're
I
not
could spend
bringing.
days bitching about Destiny. I don't want to spend the rest of the episode, talking about how much I hate that slimy piece
I'm
of
not.
shit,
I've just
right?
heard of him.
Like, I actively, not just him, but his fans as well. I'm really not a fan of him, and I don't want to talk about it because it's off topic,
but
and I could just
that's
go
fine,
on for
alright, I'll
ages.
stop
But
then.
to cap that off though.
Yeah,
yes,
okay, we'll stop.
The Destiny debate was bad. JonTron didn't do really well in it, but then again, as Lolly mentioned, it's really hard to do well in a Destiny debate just due to how slimy he is, right? And the issue is with JonTron is he wasn't prepared, right? He didn't have stuff on hand. He was making statements based on information that was probably incorrect. You know, there have been debates on the statistics and where he got them from and if they're correct and if he was right or wrong or whatever. The fact of the matter is that he went on the live stream, he said some stuff that was a bit right? He has since apologized, said that, you know, he shouldn't have done that, wasn't on, and I think that, you know, I don't think that it should be held over him to the extent that Mother's Basement is holding it over him.
And on top of all of that, I think it's also very... He's making us take him at his own words. He's not playing the context of... He's not showing the context in which he's made those statements. He's just saying, oh, these are the statements he made. I don't know the context in which those statements have been made.
Rich blacks cause more crime than poor whites, which was a very bad and poorly worded statement. And I don't believe is. Again, the statistics and all that have been debated, and I don't quite remember. I would have to actually do the research myself to be able to qualify that. But that was one of the main ones, and that was what Mother's Basement mentioned as one of the comments. But you're correct that he should be, like, the context matters a little bit in what he was saying. But to draw it back to the central current point so far, right, is that JonTron should be responsible for, you know, the fact that he has a large audience and he shouldn't be spreading misinformation, which I generally do agree with. I think that is correct. If you have a large audience, you should be making sure that what you're saying is factually accurate to some extent, right? Like, you don't have to be like a saint or anything, but you do have kind of a responsibility to make sure that misinformation... People fuck up.
Well, people make mistakes.
People fuck up all
like,
the time,
you know, they
right?
can misquote
but
something.
I do think that the idea of, you know, you are somewhat responsible for that, and as long as you fix the mistake, then I don't see what the issue is. And JonTron has fixed the mistake.
I know. Like, for example, you try to say, like, an objective fact, like, oh, yeah, the director of this show is this, and you find out that, oh, it's someone else, and you're like, you know, that was my mistake, I apologize, it's actually this guy who's the director, you know? Like, things like that happen.
Roll with them. But, yeah, so let's keep going and see where Mother's Basement goes.
Even though it's completely false. JonTron's ideas wouldn't be able to reach so many people if his videos weren't viewed by millions. Heck, he probably wouldn't have the time to think about it.
And now he's starting to get a bit more into the media influence argument as well, where he's saying that, well, you know, millions of people saw JonTron's views and they have been influenced by those views and believe him to be correct and all this other stuff, where I'm kind of like, okay, maybe some people took JonTron at his word without questioning it, right? Like, but an equal number of people were probably critical of what he said. So I don't see how, like, it's not like every single JonTron subscriber watched that live stream and was like, oh, well, black people bad, you know?
And and what about the opposite of all the times people hear good opinions about inclusion and being nice to each other? All those messages are being undone by a single guy on YouTube. You saw a clip of on a 5-hour debate or something.
Not only that, how many people come with their own loaded preconceptions because of their upbringing, see the message of inclusion and immediately start drawing, because we like to make associations in our brain. That's what people are good at. That's why conspiracy theories are so widespread. Humans are naturally naturally developed, like in terms of evolution of the brain and stuff, to seeing patterns, even if they don't necessarily exist. It's why paranoia is a thing. It's why irrational fears are a thing, and it's why superstition, and in particular, it's why conspiracy theories exist. So, if someone were to go around, if they have a preconceived notion that, inclusion isn't necessarily a good thing. I grew up in a rural background, and suddenly this city environment is worrying me because there's all of these people I don't necessarily know.
No,
not judging rural people. I'm just trying to make an argument. Yeah. When they go to a city and they see those messages of inclusion, and they go back and they see those messages of inclusion that are maybe being targeted at their community, they're going to immediately think this is some sort of conspiratorial thing. So the quality of the statement or the virtue of the statement isn't the deciding factor in what people take away when they walk away from it, because people don't stop thinking with the core argument or with what they're presented. People think outside of that. I have a copy of Mein Kampf that I got from my cousin.
Oh.
Yeah.
Disavow.
Be quiet for a second. I'm trying to be serious here. I have a copy of Mein Kampf that was gifted to my cousin because when she first read it, she thought it was going to be some edgy thing about death camps and stuff like that. It's not. It's Hitler's philosophy on life, and I've read it. I disagree with it fundamentally, and I didn't walk away thinking, all these sorts of people need to be destroyed or exterminated. I came away with a very different view, and that's specifically because people don't just accept an input. Our brains don't do that. We look at inputs of ideas we disagree with or ideas we're opposed to. We take them into consideration, and we walk away with either our core viewpoints reinforced, or our viewpoints changed or modified in a way that is closer to reality.
Yeah.
This includes extreme viewpoints.
I can agree with that. Let's continue.
All these awful things if he didn't earn tens of thousands of dollars from the one video per month that he makes. Our views enable and support the spread of his bigotry, but does that mean that we're morally obligated to stop watching? With garbage people like the Paul brothers or Rice Gum or Leafy is here, it's easy to dismiss their content based on their personalities, because their personalities are the content. If you don't like the one, you probably won't like the other. But it's entirely possible to despise everything that JonTron stands for and still find his Dino City review or his Starcade series or anything else he's made to be hilarious. I mean, I do. JonTron...
Yeah, and
what a good protest.
Again, with JonTron's views, his views have probably changed since then, right? I don't. Again, he walked back his statements. He apologized. He didn't, and I know Mother's Basement qualified that in in the comments, but I feel like in terms of the video as it is, right? It's kind of like, does JonTron really think those things? And was what JonTron said really that egregious? Like, to this point? Like, for the Holocaust denial and the Jew stuff with the director, I can kind of understand, right? It's a bit different. But with JonTron, it was just, he had some statistics that he was going off that were a bit, that might or may not have been a bit
citing,
and he was making adjustment. He was making opinions based on the information that he had been provided, which may or may not have been false, which he then walked back on. So I don't see how labeling him as this hateful person, he's horrible because he has these views, is
Yeah, and also opinions change. Yeah, but also opinions could change, Like, you don't stick to the same static opinion because, your opinion may change because of
Yeah.
experiences or stuff you've read or what
Yeah,
people have told you.
People are not.
I mean, lots of things
as
can happen.
static as people think. So yeah. All right, let's keep going.
Like, people change.
Had a massive influence on my sense of humor and my approach to creating this YouTube channel. And while I don't enjoy his current videos as much as I enjoyed his old ones, that's because I disagree with his creative direction, not with his politics. When I'm looking for inspiration on how to do absurdist humor on YouTube right, one of the first places I look to is to his channel, to Dino City Bro, the Malkovich series, and Takeshi's Challenge. And by the same token, if someone asks me in the future how to get anime romance right, I'm probably going to point to MMO Junkie alongside classics like Toradora and Kare Kano because, well, it belongs alongside them. It's that good. Even though, by doing so, I'm indirectly exposing more people to Yaginuma's hateful ideas.
Yeah.
How are you exposing them when the show
that's where I
doesn't
was gonna
have
go as
such
well.
hateful ideas?
You're not
Quick question.
exposing them to his ideas because his ideas are not in the work, and secondly, I don't believe that people are going to watch. How many times have you watched an anime and gone, "Holy shit, I gotta go follow the director on Twitter"? Because I can tell you, in my case, it's not
many.
in terms of that. I'm more likely to do it for like an artist that does like doujins or like porn or or that kind of shit, because that's a bit different, because that's
Same
online
here.
Pacific medium, and it's easier to like find sources for things and where they have their social medias and follow them.
Yeah, I have a few directors that are like my favorites
like,
for certain things, but I don't exactly like follow them on Twitter. It's
so
just
I don't,
like, oh yeah, my favorite director
did
did this.
I
like
kind
this.
of that argument, but at the same time, I'm gonna bet that the majority of anime watchers don't particularly. It's the idea of you don't care how the sausage is made, you just care about the sausage, right?
And even then,
your average anime fan probably doesn't even know what an anime director is. Okay, like, let's be real.
So on top of all of that, right? With the MMO Junkie director, and just the idea of being able to expose somebody, or indirectly exposing somebody towards, genuinely dumb rhetoric like what the MMO Junkie guy was spouting, because, I mean, the Holocaust did happen, we have actual evidence, even if, like, numbers might be inflated or deflated, who the fuck knows, because, we don't have a precise number specifically because they were obscured.
You want to dig up those bones in Auschwitz?
Yeah. Well, no, it's not just that, like, and all types of things like that, the Rwandan genocide, the things that happened with the Khmer Rouge, and they aren't keeping precise numbers for people that they just want gone. That's just kind of the nature of it. So whatever, we can only make estimates. We can only make estimates. So even if, the whole Holocaust denial thing, even if there's... My point is like, even if he is spreading his dumb, hateful rhetoric on Twitter and stuff like that, the audience isn't going to immediately accept it. Most sane people, specifically because it is fringe, isn't going to accept it. And quite frankly, the people who will so readily accept something like that are probably pretty far gone already. They're coming in with their own loaded opinions on the world.
Are going to go out and search for the director's Twitter. Some cases. Well, yeah.
I mean, we only did it because I wanted to learn more about this guy.
People don't typically do that in terms of like some people probably do. Again, it's probably like a small minority of people that are really interested in maybe directing or want to follow directors, all that stuff. But I don't like what Mother's Basement is saying is that exposing people to the work itself will make people go out to the Twitter and view as hateful rhetoric, is what I'm assuming he's meaning, because it's not a case of, oh well, it's inside the work if I expose someone to, like, Hitler's speeches, right? Like, it's not the same kind of thing. So yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. But anyway, let's keep going.
And that's not just speculation. He's been saying shit like this for years, but it's coming to light now because MMO Junkie is bringing more attention to him. And while it's good that people who will get angry about...
Because, I mean, he has been in... I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one. Because, again, there's also the idea that you have people that will go out and specifically, go out and find, try and cancel people, right? So,
hold on for a second, because I do want to bring this up. Is he seriously comparing, like, oh, you can't kill 6 million people with gas because the atomic bomb?
Yeah, it's nuts.
Like, what the fuck is he saying?
This Google
what he's saying,
I want to study
seeing
this,
it,
man.
that means that more people who might be more receptive to his ideas are also seeing them now as well. But still, this is a show that I think is worth looking at for anyone who wants to talk critically about anime, or tell love stories, or just enjoy a good anime in general, for that matter. Because putting aside questions of whether or not a huge number of non-garbage people who also worked on a show should be dragged with the director, should we as an audience miss out on good stories because bad people are involved in telling them? If you want to watch a good anime love story, MMO Junkie will scratch that itch. If you're in the mood for a dramatic tale of swords and samurai, there really aren't many better than Kenshin. Is it right to deny yourself something that you know will make you happy simply because the person who created it is a criminal or is using his fame to forward awful ideas?
Using their fame to forward awful ideas. Not sure about that one. Not sure about that one. Yeah,
I think using it would actually hurt their
like,
reputation even more. Like
action. Whereas I feel like him spouting his shit on Twitter is just him spouting his shit on Twitter, his personal opinions. Yeah.
You know, people spout shit on Twitter. It's like, it's the fucking void, you know? Like, you spout some bullshit and some people listen.
Rants, right? But no, exactly.
I mean,
like,
are you above the supreme god Rikafag, though?
Everyone spewed shit on Twitter, and it's not like deliberately like, oh, I'm trying to spread these views to the world, right? It's more like, oh, I just, I thought this was a good opinion that I had. I'm just gonna post it and just, see what happens. Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
yeah, you just like fucking spout shit or troll on Twitter. Like, that's what I mostly do. So.
Deliberately trying to spread hateful ideas, I think, is a bit of a stretch.
Like, for example, if, say, one of my favorite mangakas, like, came out and
like,
was just like, oh, yeah, I'm support the KKK, I'd be like...
was using his fame to spread pedophilia. He was using his fame to do his own personal shit. To finance it,
yeah.
But once again, that goes back
finances
to
child porn addiction.
With, like, once the money leaves the hand, right? Once the money is left, then it's not your money anymore, and you can't decide what happens to it. Like, for all, it's yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, how much do you guys want to bet that both these shows he's mentioned are also on Crunchyroll?
I know Rurouni Kenshin isn't. I don't think so, anyways. So pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's why he's more critical on that and less critical. And I'm not saying that that Jeff here might be compromised in his own ethics, but
are you saying he has? Maybe. Are you saying he's got an unconscious bias?
Maybe.
We all have, always.
Yeah, I know. I'm joking, but
No, I think he has a very conscious bias right here. I'm just gonna.
Oh, I know, but I'm being sarcastic.
I think there is a genuine financial thing. Anyways, Ellie, you haven't been talking for a while, so I'm kind of.
Is it because your internet's dying, or is it because you just don't really have much to say? Alright, well, fair enough.
Don't have really much to say.
ideas. This might seem like kind of a weak counterpoint to some of you. Many will say that nobody's personal enjoyment should outweigh the moral outrage against the awful things done by these creators. But good anime, films, games, and even YouTube videos can be more than just a way to vapidly pass your time. They can genuinely enrich a person's life, help them connect with others, or inspire them to create themselves. That power of art is a big part of why I make analysis videos in the first place. My girlfriend Yazzie and I...
Alright, let's keep...
Analysis
might
in
be
air
interesting,
quotes.
Anal sis.
watched MMO Junkie almost religiously week to week as it was airing. We adored the show and characters for how they reflected our own relationship and experiences, and we got in a lot of good cuddling while laughing and going aw at some of the sappier moments. And while that might make you throw up in your mouth, for us it was a bonding experience that we wouldn't trade for, well, anything. For almost every work of art that's made by someone horrible, there's going to be someone out there who doesn't agree with them at all, but whose life will be made better for experiencing that art. Should they really deny themselves the opportunity to enjoy that because of the creator's sins? I don't think that's such a cut and dry question. And it gets even more complicated for people who work in or discuss media for a living. If you want to be an anime critic or produce shonen anime and manga, you should probably familiarize yourself with Kenshin at some point because, like it or not, it's hugely influential and popular, with as many sales as FMA, Attack on Titan, and Hunter x Hunter. And while problematic media certainly poses issues for anime critics, it's even rougher for people looking to make or criticize films. And not...
So that was what he was portraying as problematic there was a scene from Royal Space Force. By the way, watch Royal Space Force because it is an absolutely beautiful film. It's one of the premier works of Gainax. It has probably the single best examples of animation for aircraft and rocketry I can think of. Like, rocketry was more accurately done by something like Planets, but there's these scenes in Royal Space Force that show just an aircraft breaking up after its fuselage has been compromised, and it's incredibly accurate to how it would happen. And
I do think that moment, that scene wasn't to a slight against the show. It was just, this behavior is problematic, not the show, in which it's set.
Yeah, but you never know with Jeff.
No, that's
and
true.
also like a work itself. Like, generally, you judge the work on its own merits before you start. Before you start like talking about the author and stuff, like you say, like, oh, the characters were such and such, or the story was such and such. Like, usually you judge the series by its own merits before.
Yeah, but
you may mention the director
thing is,
or whatever
when it finances problematic behavior, etc., that's the point. That's the question.
Well, I wouldn't know because I don't know. I don't. Like, I mean, if you have a series that sells like over 1 million copies or something like that, I mean, it's gonna spread.
I don't know.
Like you.
It's unreasonable to assume that somebody can micromanage their lives to that degree. Like.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's like,
it is completely unreasonable, and you're going to be indirectly at some point funding some pretty awful shit just by paying taxes. I mean, your government isn't without sin. Mine isn't certainly without sin. And yeah, no, like, my government has funded things I genuinely thought is harmful to the world or something, but
cough, ISIS, cough.
That's a conspiracy theory, but it's completely unreasonable, and I've seen people try to put this in the past that you can't reference, or you can't there was somebody I know who is actually getting involved in publishing for Japanese tabletop, and in the system that she is publishing, they do make a reference to Rurouni Kenshin. This video was actually brought up during that conversation. At least in the original translation, it was. I'm not sure if it really was in the original work. They didn't really specify or prove it, so I can't make sure. But they do reference it, and they were saying, "Oh, we're taking this out of the translation and we're translating it as something else." And I did actually bring up, I don't think it's reasonable to do this because. Just because, of the Rurouni Kenshin's author's past, it is important to the flavor of the setting that they would reference something like this. And we got into a little bit of a disagreement with it. And, and it was not like we're throwing shit at each other. We're both fucking adults. Not all arguments about politics or how things can be done has to end with shit flinging. I want to put this out there for anybody who's watching. You do not need to be the monkey beating your chest and slinging the turd. You can actually
debate me.
What?
Debate me.
Debate me. I've done this before. I've done this before. Don't worry about it.
Oh my lord, no. And that's especially why I hate e-debates, because e-debates have moderators, and most of the time, or debates have moderators, and most of the time, people debating don't actually bring their facts to the table. They're trying, there's no time for that. Yeah, okay, you can say that they should try to be researched and accurate, but you can't just toss up, and this is what I hate with e-debates, you can't just toss up a link to something and be like, well, this thing proves it. It's like, well, I don't have time to read and digest this and pick it apart. Like, what does that bring to the table? But, so it's just completely unreasonable to expect people to live like this, and it's,
assuming something made by a bigot, or a sex offender, or something else.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm not autistic enough. I'm not autistic enough to put that much detail into my life.
To be sure.
And it goes the other way. I hate when I'm in trying to share a work, again, the Ion Fury thing, and now every time I talk about it, people are going to be like, well, didn't those people capitulate to SJWs, or something like, it'd be something like, a digital love story. Every time I would bring that up, people would be like, well, wasn't that made by Christina Love, and wasn't she, anti-Gamergate or whatever? And I was like, it's annoying. It is really annoying that you have these people who just refuse to engage with something. You see this all the time, and I don't see that as a reasonable thing. I see that as a political extremism in some regard, because you're completely trying to disconnect and isolate yourself from ideas because, oh my god, they might be creeping into my brain like a virus or a radio wave or something crazy like that. It's insane.
So let's continue.
Should we keep going?
Just because of those recent Hollywood scandals. Roman Polanski is a rapist, and not an alleged rapist like Kevin Spacey or Donald Trump, where someone who's in denial can maybe argue that all of the facts.
Yes, it never really proven.
We're not going to comment on the politics here because, quite frankly, fuck him for shoving it in.
I'm fucking sick of hearing about fucking Trump.
Let's continue.
Let's stop and play.
Aren't in yet. Roman Polanski was convicted of the statutory rape of a 13-year-old actress in the 1970s. He served some of his time, then fled the country to Europe, where it's alleged he raped and sexually assaulted more girls over the last 40 years. And look, as is the case with literally any famous person who's done something like this, there will be people who argue that there are extenuating circumstances that complicate the issue. Quentin Tarantino. But we know for a fact that Polanski did one of the most horrible things that a person can ever do to another person, and he's been accused of doing it again since then. He is not a good human being. But he is a good director. Arguably one of the greatest directors to ever live. Seriously, Google greatest directors of all time and try to find a list without his name on it. Rosemary's Baby is one of the greatest horror films of all time. And while the Oscars aren't worth much, he earned heaps of praise and awards for The Pianist long after his conviction in 2002. And he's made many more great films beside those, including Chinatown, which is essential viewing for anyone interested in film noir, and probably for anyone who wants to understand film, period. I really can't overstate its importance. Any viewing or discussion of Polanski's work should definitely have a little "he's a rapist" asterisk next to it, and not just because it's abhorrent on its own, but because it shows how far Hollywood will go to protect the worst of their own. But that doesn't mean that we should ignore or dismiss the merits of that work or stop watching it.
Pause right here real quick. The thing about that asterisk, and because of how loaded it is that it completely undermines and breaks up the discussion about anything. It's kind of like when I try to talk about anything other Lovecraft related now. Like, oh, do you know the diabetic cat? Like, yeah, I know. Like, the rat's in the wall. His cat is in there because his cat died recently, and he wanted to like memorialize the cat. Yeah, sure, granted. And I'm not even gonna leave a lot of the racial prejudice of the era out of it, because that does paint his work, and that does paint how horror related it is. Good horror represents the era it's in, and the era that Lovecraft lived in was marked by anti-immigration movements in the US and, racial intolerance. So, but at the same time, it's like, it does devalue the conversation, because suddenly you're having to dedicate large amount of time
to talk about something
virtue signal, basically. Yeah, that is essentially virtue signaling, because you need to point out that the bad person is bad, even though we all know that the bad person is bad, because we've all just kind of agreed on it. With Lovecraft, it's also more complicated, because he was also mentally ill. He also isolated, the times he lived in, yada yada yada. Who fucking cares?
Changed his mind, etc. And later he became a better person.
Yeah. Which nobody brings up the fact that he did actually marry a Jew at some point.
I think that it's definitely a case of it basically pisses in the lake, right? Or pisses in the well. Yeah, it's.
It poisons the well. It poisons the fucking well, and it's annoying.
Things like, with Ion Fury recently, with the whole fucking... Again, that whole thing is a discussion that we could have, right? Because it's such a... the back and forth going on that. But the point is...
You could go on for hours about that, and it's a shame, because that takes away from what the game does. That is ingenious.
What about Michael Jackson?
Everyone talks about the game, the controversy, rather than the game itself. Like, I actually don't know a whole lot about the game, because all I know is, there's controversy going on around it and shit. So it's kind of like, it's a shame, and I think that that's a problem with what Mother's Basement is kind of proposing here. This idea that we have to always quantify this stuff constantly, even if the discussion is not necessarily around that. It's around the work, like talking.
Imagine if every time I brought up I ever brought up anything about the German war machine, I had to asterisk the Germans were Nazis, and Nazis were bad, and Hitler was bad.
But then when you talk about how the Germans were defeated by the Americans, then you have to put an asterisk about
Americans bombed
American internment camps.
The extra credits video, they were talking about the idea that, if you're playing as the Nazi, we have to make sure that everyone understands that the Nazis were bad, right? Like, we have to have the qualifier.
Yeah, that was what I go on for.
Yeah, interesting thing is that I was at my work, and I actually showed I go to this thing where work experience thing, and I showed one of the teachers there about it, and I showed the pause on point video, and he thought it was very interesting that this person was equating that if you play something that means cult, he thought it was very interesting. He thought extra credits had a very interesting take, although he felt it was a bit incorrect.
Continue.
So.
But then you come back to the problem of support. Anytime you buy a Chinatown Blu-ray or watch the movie on Netflix, you're paying Polanski royalties, supporting his lavish European fugitive lifestyle and, according to multiple allegations, his continued pattern of sexually abusive behavior, which is obviously not okay. Some people will say that the solution to this dilemma is piracy. Knowing my stance on the subject, you can probably guess that I don't agree. Firstly, because in pirating a film or anime to spite the director, you're also stealing from everyone else who...
We've just gone through all of the... Yeah, so hang on a minute. We've just gone through all of the stuff about how... Oh, you're sending money to pedophile, right? Or you're sending money to racist, or you're sending money to bigot, right? When you buy the work, right? And then now... when the solution, you have,
Don't pirate Netju Susume. You have to watch it on Crunchyroll. My sponsor.
Solution of, oh well, just pirate it though. Now it's not okay because there's other people that worked on it, right?
Well, it's three different, let's say, premises, and only two of them can be satisfied at once. You can either pay the studio, support the studio, support the racist, whatever, the black stain, and not pirate. You can pirate and support the studio by with merchandise or whatever, etc., etc. But you can't do all three. You cannot not support one guy in the studio and not support the entire studio.
You know, I've got a brilliant solution. Just remove all morality and just do whatever the fuck you want.
But then the video.
There's a solution.
Yeah, but then you wouldn't have a video.
Yeah, again, it's weird.
Points to discuss.
Yeah, I know.
And here's the thing, right?
Like when I'm purchasing anime or shit, I don't give a shit if the person who wrote it is the Grand Klansman of the KKK.
Because
I don't give a fuck.
He's already talked about the idea of, well, there's more than one person on the team, right? So now he's just bringing that back again. Like, he's talking about it in the terms of piracy, but this is what I mean by the idea that he's essentially just repeating the same video twice, right? Like it's like we've doubled back like 10 minutes to when he was talking about Ender's Game and talking about how, oh, well, there was other people that worked on Ender's Game. It wasn't just the writer of the book, right, that worked on the movie and did other things. So, yeah, this is the same point.
Yeah, this entire part can be cut out.
Well, this is what he does.
So this is Mother's Basement filler, essentially, you know, because he's got to get more money because, you know, it's over 10 minutes.
Except he tries to recontextualize it, like he's talking about piracy,
like an Ouroboros.
But he's still making the same point of, well, if you pirate the work, you're not supporting all these other people that are not bigots that are doing it, which is why he doesn't agree with the piracy thing. I mean, the way that I view it, I think, is just like, if you don't want to support it, then don't support it. If you want to pirate it, then pirate it. If you want to buy it and don't care about the fact that this guy is a bigot, like most people probably don't give a shit because they don't follow this shit, then fine. Like, I don't see where the issue is. Like, it's people's money and people can do what they want with their money, right? Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, he's moralizing purchases, Like, for example, like, there's probably corporations, like, there's probably products I buy from corporations who probably do shady shit, and do I give a fuck?
Right? Like,
no.
This reminds me of, what was it? When, I think it was Hugto Pretty Cure came out, the ending is, like, some spicy shit, because, it more or less concludes of, doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, or, you know, what gender you are, everybody can be a pretty cure, and everybody can be a princess, everyone can be special, and there are a lot of people that were really upset and are like, we need to boycott this is spreading degeneracy, and it's just like,
Alright, let's keep going.
Shut up.
Yeah, we're on the Lewd Gamers server, so...
Oh.
worked on it, and secondly,
Watch
because if
pretty
something
clear,
is
by the way.
valuable enough to be worth your time, it's valuable enough to be worth your money. I mean, if you're protesting the Nestle Corporation, you don't go out and shoplift Nesquik, you choose not to buy it in a boy.
It's a bit of a false equivalency here.
It's not the same thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've got Nestle
I feel like this
Nesquik
is
on
a
my
bit of a
shelf.
false equivalency
Continue.
here, because there's a difference between pirating something and stealing something from a store, right? Like,
Also, if you're so...
Also, stealing.
Also, I like how he is assuming the very basic morality, that our morality is justified by the legal system. Now, I absolutely do not encourage you, from a personal interest standpoint, to ever shoplift something, because that will get you in jail. I would advise against it. Let me finish.
Yeah, my mother worked at a super. All right.
However, if you are morally opposed to something and you actively are dedicated to that cause, you can very much argue that you are within the right to shoplift it. Because you are fighting for something. You are willing to put your morals above things that are as tenuous as...
doing pretty much anything. It's why Antifa can justify hitting people with bike locks or throwing milkshakes at people. Yeah.
I mean, but that...
Or milkshakes with acid in them.
But what I'm trying to say, though, is that he's assuming that morality is specifically tied to the legal system, and that's not the case at all. People's individual moral standard is different, and sometimes divorced from the legal system. Sometimes people will follow their own morals that are completely outside of the bounds of the legal system. That happens.
Legal to smoke marijuana.
There are people who probably shoplifted Nestle
we don't,
over their shady shit, and
critical
I would never do that myself. I don't care enough.
The breaking of the law.
Yeah, but you can argue that they were in the right. You can argue that they were in the right for doing that.
Yeah. A thing that I also want to bring up is that my mother used to work at a supermarket, and the amount of profits and the amount of money that shoplifting actually costed was quite eye-opening, to say the least. And that would also have the knockback effect on all the employees, supplies, and staff as well. So we do not we at Critical Critique do not do not promote shoplifting.
I feel like this
disavow.
I think that it's because media piracy versus the theft of physical product is quite different. Because you have we would be able to go into an entire discussion about piracy and the ethics behind anime piracy and sales versus lost sales. Well, we'd have to. We would have to do that.
If you guys want to do that video, I'd be willing to host it or anything like that. That'd be a fun discussion.
It would be like a pirate, because Mother's basically.
I know, another time, but it would be a good discussion, I think.
But it's it's the end of this section is that this is a false equivalence between two very different, similar but different things. But yeah, let's keep going.
Boycott, because that's what makes the point, that you're willing to forego something you enjoy to avoid supporting bad business practices or bad people. Stealing from people who have nothing to do with it, or even people who do, muddies the message. So then, maybe we should stop watching content from people we take issue with in protest. Maybe the principle's the same, although in practice it is slightly different. You can buy generic store-brand chocolate milk mix, but there's no store-brand Chinatown, or store-brand Kenshin, or store-brand MMO Junkie. If you want to protest creators like this, you will miss out on some good or even great stories. Your cultural landscape will be less rich and...
Well, you should support... It's okay to watch it. Oh no, it's not okay to watch it. Oh, but you should, I'm not.
It would kind of mirror his own.
I'm not sure what his actual stance is, because he hasn't made a definitive stance.
Well, he's Canadian, so he doesn't have an actual stance. Like the Canadians are the eternal fence-sitters.
I don't know how to feel about it because he's not like trying to prove a stance. Like he's kind of just going over. Oh well, this is one way to think about it. This is another way to think about it. Oh, but maybe this though, and again, he's repeating the same shit. Like I feel like this is exactly what he said
syndrome again.
Like 10 minutes
Jesus
ago.
Christ!
This is the exact same point that he was making. That okay, maybe we should not watch them. But then if you don't watch them, then you're not you do enjoy it because yeah, it's weird. But let's keep going.
Varied than it might otherwise be. I guess whether you're willing to deprive yourself like that for the sake of your principles, or whether you even think it's right to do so, will come down to the individual. Now, as for me, if the tone of this video hasn't made it clear already, I'm torn. I think it's important to avoid financially supporting bad people or giving undeserved platforms to bad ideas, but I also think it's important to let art stand on its own merits, to recognize artistic greatness when we see it, regardless of where it comes from, and to learn from it, even if we disagree with it. It's hard to reconcile those values. In general, I'm a proponent of the idea that we should hate the jerk, not the work, and vice versa. I might despise SAO, but from all outward appearances, I actually think Reki Kawahara is a pretty swell guy, and I'd love to grab a beer with him sometime. But then, I personally benefit from that stance, don't I? I make art, or at least what I would...
Debatable.
Is this podcast art?
I think so. I think we should end it now.
No, not yet.
Look.
Ellie's, I don't think I can last more.
Well, my thumbnail...
Art and air
I
quotes.
have the answer. I have the answer. My thumbnails are art. The rest is garbage.
Okay.
Hey,
so...
you trying to start shit with me?
Lolly's
Your audio cleaning is very good.
It's objectively true. There's no... Okay. But, it's an interesting point, I guess. And it's good that he's now at, like... Because, yeah, in the video, he's been flip-flopping around, as I mentioned before. Now he's said that, he's torn on it, right? He's got the two conflicting viewpoints, right? And then he's qualified it that, you should hate the jerk, not the work, right? And now he's talking about how, well, yeah, but he profits off that stance, and now he's probably going to flip-flop again and go, oh, but, it's
I think it would all be solved if he just expanded a little bit. If he says, well, we shouldn't support bad guys, then you could say we shouldn't support studios who pay directly bad guys, and therefore the people who are supporting this culture it is allowed to punish them with it, like a boycott does.
Yeah.
Because a boycott doesn't only affect the top guy at the top, it also affects everybody till supply chains and grocery stores. So if that's okay, why not the studio and the studio that hires the guy, etc., and then the animators are collateral damage. So I think he's a little... If boycotts is allowed, then piracy is an equivalent of it.
Let's keep going because we're almost done.
Considered to be art, and I also have opinions that would probably upset a large portion of my...
Yeah.
Well, this is more political and less and less anime, so let's continue.
My audience. I'm left-leaning. I support gay marriage, abortion, gun control, and taxing churches, values that many on the right see as evil or authoritarian.
Oh God,
and I share those ideas.
Gay marriage,
radical political
guys.
Beliefs.
Oh no, he supports abortion. Oh no. I fucking...
the sin.
But here's the thing, Mother's Basement. I don't
I
hate
like
you
how
because of
I
your
like
views.
fucking
I hate
vanilla.
You 'cause you're fucking stupid about them. Like, some of the hot takes you have on Twitter are just fucking, like, crazy, right? Like, there's nothing wrong. Like, there is nothing wrong.
Oh, dude, you just see this. You should have seen his socialism stuff like yesterday. It was
marriage,
spicy as
or
fuck.
any of that lefty shit. Fuck, I support at least mildly. Yeah, is it even lefty anymore to support those things?
Is it even lefty?
And people would call me right-wing, even I don't consider myself right-wing, right? Like, even I would, I support a lot of those things, or at least tangentially support them. I might not support them, dogmatically, or, like, completely, but, like, I'm not anti them. I don't think it's, like, horrible that you support gay marriage or abortion or any of that stuff, as long as you're not fucking crazy about it, right?
Well, you need to understand though that Mother's Basement, considering he is in charge of propaganda for the anime, right? He is establishing what's called a straw man, so that people can rally against it, and ergo, as a result of that, spread the cause, as it were. I see what this based and red-pilled Jeff guy is up to. I see his shit.
Oh my god. Yeah, this is just
again, I hate this whole virtue signaling thing he's doing. Like, he had to shove this into a video for another ad break.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, this is fucking unnecessary moral fagging, and it's making me sick to my stomach.
Like, some people might, but like most sane, non-dogmatic, non-extremist people don't give a single fuck.
I don't even really hate Mother's Basement like that much. I just think he's kind of boring.
I guess I should walk back a little bit. I guess hate is a strong word. I just think that he's fucking stupid sometimes, and he needs to do proper research and actually think about what he's like saying. Not even just that meme, but like just he needs to like think about
for me,
and understand the things that he's supporting, rather than just dogmatically supporting them because the left thinks it's good, so that means I must think it's good too, and then not actually understand the philosophies and the shit that he's talking about.
Yeah. I just want to. By the way, Donald Trump misspelled the Dow Jones. That's really embarrassing. Anyways, for me, and I guess this is something I should clarify. It's really hard for me to hate a person. I can hate somebody's position. I can hate how they express it, but whenever I see somebody expressing or just things I genuinely don't like, I'm more interested in how they got to that, what got to that conclusion, what led to that. It's hard for me to hate people because so much about a person isn't up to the person themselves. Like, honestly.
On Twitter a lot, even if I do keep them mostly out of my videos. Yet some people out there see my stances on these subjects, disagree with me, and still choose to support my content because they enjoy it. I turned them down, but at one point the moderators of a right-wing Discord server asked if I'd like to partner with them because they enjoy my content. And when I told them about my views, they said they were irrelevant to why they were asking. They just like what I make. And I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't touched and I wasn't grateful for people who think that way.
Oh my
I'm
god.
Also,
oh my god. Oh my god. Is he? Oh fuck. Is he actually gonna do this? Is he actually gonna pull the cis white man shit? Is he actually? Are you really? I'm standing up and I'm walking around now because I can't.
Sorry that I'm
believe,
white. Sorry that I'm male.
Why? Why are you doing this? What are you doing? What are you?
He had to bring race into it.
Okay. Before we continue, Yeah. All right.
Dude, you see that one of his eyebrows is like slanted upwards, like he's like
Let's see what he has to say.
white dude living in Canada, which inherently colors my perspective on things like this and gives me a much greater tolerance for things that would be utterly horrifying to somebody less privileged than me. So, yeah, I would never say that my way of thinking about any subject is the only way that anybody's allowed to think about it, unless it's SAO.
Funny joke, but what did this have to do with anything?
Why is that's all this
Nothing.
is. It's
Why is he
moral
stroking his
grandstanding
own
bullshit.
moral
Like, look
cock
at me,
right
I'm
now?
so fucking pure, and I'm a cis white male, and that means that my perspective is not necessarily the correct one, and it's like,
also,
no fucking shit. You fucking... This is why... This shit like this, Smother's Basement, is why people dogmatically hate you. This is the shit that makes people dislike you, right? This is the shit right here.
Yeah, also, if you notice... Yeah, I think I also noticed as he's speaking, like, one of his eyebrows,
know,
like, twitching up. Like, is that
just,
Morse code for saying, like, help
completely...
me? They've got my wife
hostage. This is completely irrelevant, right? It's...
Instagram
you're right,
has my wife hostage.
It's just moral virtue signaling, grandstanding bullshit.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I'm about to puke, so let's just continue.
No, it's well, I was trying to say something. I can't quite remember. Why do I think that this whole story about the right-wing Discord partnering? I don't understand why people try to partner with Discords. It's always been weird to me. But
it actually sounds a lot like a hashtag shit that didn't happen. Like, it sounds.
This doesn't sound like something that actually
like
happened.
And then
like,
everybody
why bring this
story,
up? It sounds too convenient.
Because he doesn't actually say what the server was, who it was.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's kind of a bit. I don't know about that one, but it's morally, this is just moral bullshit, and I think we should just keep going because oh yeah, well,
like he probably didn't want to put the name out there because he didn't want somebody to get dogpiled or something like that. But it begs the question.
Also, Discord servers can change names.
Well, I mean, yeah, but it also begs the question though: if you can't prove it, and because of personal reasons, why would you put that in the video? What does that have to do with the point?
So, yeah, I don't know. Right now, it's something I take on a case-by-case basis, and I'll probably continue doing so for the foreseeable future. Now, as for the specific case that started me on this tangent, what do I think should happen to Yaginuma-san? Well, he should probably be fired because...
Woo, bro! He should be fired!
That went from 0 to 100 quickly.
Woo, lad. That's pretty fucking strong.
I can say... I will say that if he did say that on the public-facing Discord and connected it to himself, well, at that point it is kind of his responsibility. I can understand if a government or if a company would cut ties. Like, no, you're hurting our brand.
Connected to any company. I don't think he even linked specifically.
But he was actively connecting himself.
Right. Yeah, I can
like
get what
he was
saying.
actively saying, "I am this person."
Should have the right to do that. I just think that getting fired over your yeah.
If you're gonna say hot shit, you don't attach your name. There was a reason why anonymous treaties were a thing way back when.
It's just. I just don't like the idea of people getting, called to be fired, right? Like if or put pressure put on the company to fire them. I feel like
I think they
associate with that, and it's their own decision. Then sure, but I hate this idea of it goes back to cancel culture stuff where it's like people putting the pressure on the company to be like, you have to fire this person because they have views that we find abhorrent, right? Like, should the devs of Ion Fury be fired because they said some spicy
and
shit
it's
on
not...
Discord? No, I don't think so. Should this guy be? And that's, but should he'd be fired because he has some pretty abhorrent views on Twitter. No, I just don't like it. I'm not personally a fan of that. Oh no, I know you're not. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not morally supporting it because honestly, I think in the grander scheme of things, you might be doing more harm than good by just completely unpersoning somebody from a discussion because their views are dumb. People can change over time. You can challenge them as they present their views. But when you just completely silence them, a lot of people have an allure to things that are taboo
forbidden
or unspeakable, and I think by simply erasing them, you are actually drawing more people to those types of things. You're seeing it now. We live in a time where people do actively get fired for this, but it's not stopping certain social trends from happening.
It's part of the thrill, man. Like, there's a thrill in doing something that people don't like you doing. Yeah. Like, there's a thrill in shoplifting.
This was also in that after credits video where edgy things are edgy because they're edgy. Circular reasoning, but that's kind of the point.
Yeah, but if you look at like the probation and you look at the probation, you know, it's like, oh, we're gonna stop alcohol from being sold, and what did that make? Fucking black market.
Yeah, well, that's because alcohol is an addictive substance,
it makes it
so that's a little
somewhat
different.
Desirable for people because it helps. Yeah. I know. I get. Yeah, but
it
the
helps
fact that it's forbidden as well as like. I mean, it's the same with fucking all drugs.
Yeah, it's forbidden.
Right?
It's tab.
It's part of why people get
it adds to the charm,
right? Because
it's like behind the, it's like, oh, you want to, because like as a teenager,
if you're trying to change the world, you don't want to accidentally fuel a counterculture, which is exactly what happens when things like this happen. If you blacklist enough people from an industry, they're going to start their own industry, and if they're spreading a message you don't like, you lose all power to change their mind on that, and they're going to be completely closed off from your opinions. It can backfire. Like that's the thing I hate about how the e-politics situation is. They are playing with some fire when it comes to social engineering, and they do not understand the consequences.
I mean, if you look at, like, say, for example, the French Revolution, like, the nobles didn't take it seriously, and then look what fucking happened.
So Mother's Basement
they got fucking they got their doors kicked down, and time for the guillotine, bitch.
Because his actions are reflecting poorly on his employers. To be clear, I don't think that anyone should lose their job just for having a bad opinion, even a poisonous
thing. But then he also says that he doesn't believe that people should be fired for just having abhorrent opinions, which that's very No, he did.
Let's continue because he wasn't finished.
Like, those two very ideas are contradictory. You can't like support someone getting fired because of their ideas and then say that you don't support people being fired because of their ideas. That's a bit hypocritical in my eyes. You can't like.
I hate how soft bellied he is in all of this.
Like if he had just said,
at least
like,
Zarya and Pedro have a hard stance.
Because he has abhorrent views, then I'd be like, I wouldn't agree with him, but I'd be like, okay, that's fine. But he's doing that thing where he's trying to fence it a little bit on it, and he's being like, okay, but that's as Ali said.
Fucking backtracking. The amount of backtracking here is insane.
Well, back and forth.
Ignorant one. And it would be one thing if he was just expressing his own thoughts privately with his friends, but publishing them on a media platform, particularly one that he's grown by showing production stills from the anime, has a negative impact on everyone he works with. It's selfish.
On a public platform.
No, because it's his personal and his work persona are the same. If this Twitter account was only his personal account and not also posting production and work stuff,
I can kind of get where he's coming from with that, but at the same time, But at the same time, I don't agree with it.
Because now he's representing the company all the same.
I don't think people should be fired specifically for their opinions. And I don't like. I just don't like where it leads. I'm not a fan of it. I understand why a company would want to fire someone because they're making the company look bad, right? I get that. I still just don't like it. I don't think that you should you should be allowed to voice your own opinions, you know, like free speech and all that, right? I feel like you should be allowed to do that just as much as the company should be allowed to disassociate with you because of it, right? And and I know that sounds a bit contradictory, but it's very it's complicated in how I feel about it, because it's like there's a number of factors involved. Like I don't think that it's you have to think about the pressure aspect. Like there's people calling for his firing, pressuring the company. It's I guess a little bit, but that's a bit wishy-washy.
It's an individual case by case basis, I think, is what you're trying to say.
But at the very least,
yeah,
though you are torn, at least you're not making a 19-minute video on a subject you haven't come to a conclusion on.
On principle, I disagree.
Oh, shit.
That the public should decide that someone should be fired because that they... Yeah. But
well, this video is 2.5 hours, so...
But that doesn't change. We're discussing a specific point. We are still coming to some sort of conclusion. He basically wastes everybody's time. Like our conclusion is the critique of a point, of it as a critique of a video. We have a definitive point for these 2-hour videos. It is not the same thing with 20.
My main issue is with the public deciding it rather than the company deciding it. Like again, it comes to the like. Because I'm formulating it right now, right? Like, I don't like the idea of, well, the public thinks that this is bad. Like, this section of the audience, the public, believes that this is abhorrent and bad and terrible. Therefore, we should pressure company X to fire this individual because of the stuff that they believe or think. And, yeah, it doesn't sit right with me. In a sense, and but I can understand. Like it's like I can understand why a company would disassociate, but at the same time, I just finish.
Before we continue, I just wanted to point out to the mouse cursor
even though this is like a director and he's posting stills from the anime, and this is from 2018. Only has 83 retweets and 265 likes. So his reach is not that much into the grand scheme of things, if this is like accurate to the time of posting, right? You know, like I don't know exactly what his follower count was at the time before he blew up, right? So that's another thing to consider. Like, would again, if he's been saying this stuff for years, right, and the company's allowed him to say this stuff publicly on Twitter for years, it's kind of, I'm not sure about that. That one. But yeah, we're almost there. We're on the home stretch. Let's see what his conclusion is.
On his part, and I think that makes him a bad employee. At the very least, he should be barred from.
Already come true, but let's. Oh, so okay. Well, actually, if I can go back a little bit, we can see. Okay, so at the time of this recording, he had 5,357 followers. So, I don't know. Yeah, get more followers. Yeah.
Wow, you should bitch about the Jews more often, or else you'll get more followers.
Yeah, so I feel like his reach in terms of like public image of the company,
an asshole.
Like, I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But let's continue.
Using Twitter for like ever. That said, if he gets a chance to direct another show, I'll probably still watch it. Mainly because, well, I watch everything, but partly because he is a good director. I kind of want to see what else he's capable
of. And Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
you
guys,
should-
I see. I also see
but
see a Jewish star in the
No,
animation
that's
clip
not-
as
that's
well.
not-
Again,
a
he's
Jewish
doing this
star,
wish-washy shit,
so-
where he's like, he's not. Yeah, no, but he's doing that wish-washy bullshit, where he's like not.
Oh, sorry, it's a pentagram.
Yeah,
my
he's
mistake.
not. But he's not like. He's
Well,
like,
there's a
okay, you should be
Kabbalah
fired. Okay, he should be banned from Twitter. But I'm still gonna watch his shit, and I still think he should be allowed to make shit. And it's like, okay, like, yeah, like it's like one extreme. It's like he's making an extreme, and
Make
he's like
up your
walking
damn
back
mind.
on it. It's like, like, could you just be consistent a little bit? Like, I don't know. Yeah. All right. Let's keep going.
I think you're asking too much from Mother's Basement, but you know.
Unless I change my mind on this by then, which I might very well do, because as I hope these last 15 minutes have demonstrated, it's a complicated problem without an easy answer. Although if you have reached an answer that works for you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Just please keep the discussion civil. That's probably a bit naive of me to ask, but a man can dream. While you're down there, if you'd like to hear more of what I have to say about media, especially anime, then hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I
So,
promise the rest of my
video is
videos
over.
won't be...
Yeah.
I feel like
Thank fucking
the
God.
obvious criticisms. The video's too long. He's made the same points multiple times. Like he should. I reckon he should have cut the video almost in half. I think he didn't need the last half of the video, or at least he could have like kept the ending and just cut out the entire, because he just goes over the same things twice. But in terms of the actual points, he doesn't really have a point. He hasn't like definitively stated his position in terms, like he's wish-washed between positions, which is fine if he's conflicted on it. Like I mentioned, like my own confliction in terms of like people getting fired, right? But it's like he's trying to make a video where it's like, you know, should we hate the work or the jerk, you know? And it's, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm not very convinced by him.
It begs the question why this wasn't just like a Twitter thread or a blog post rather than a long form video. Like, because people are going to go into this specifically because they want to know his stance or they want to define their own stance, and all he's really done was like, here are some things to consider. Here are some other things to consider.
Kind of, a little bit.
I have no strong feelings about
very,
this
very
one way or
fancy.
the other.
I'm not particularly Yeah. So, I
It's the
guess in
neutral
conclusion,
nation, the
like
neutral
in terms of
people.
our own like feelings about it, I personally think that you should separate the work from the artist, right? And I think that you should be able to. You can still enjoy media that's created by people that do abhorrent things or things that you disagree with. I mean, let's be real here. Most of modern media is controlled by fucking lefty SJW types. So, I mean, the quality of that... And the quality of a lot of that work is debatable, but, you know, sometimes they put out stuff that I might enjoy or like, you know, and I don't, you know, you got to kind of reconcile that fact, alright? Like, people that you don't like are gonna make stuff that you might like. And I feel like just because, you know, like a lefty type SJW makes something, you shouldn't just go, oh, well, you know, it's immediately shit. It's how they execute it and what they put in it that counts. It's the final product that matters. And if they make a final product that's good, you have to give kudos where kudos is due, right? The same logic applies, you know, for right-wing stuff or left-wing stuff or whatever. You have to judge the work on its merits, and if they end up making the work overly political in a left-leaning cases, or they end up, you know, doing a lot of censorship or whatever, then you have to kind of judge that in. But yeah.
Here's the thing. What's so wrong about hearing a political opinion different from yours, even an extreme one? Because it's not going to hurt you. It's not going to immediately convert you. I mean, I like the movie Angel Cop, and that is blatantly anti-Semitic at times, and I definitely disagree with some of the things that it portrays.